Right, I thought we'd look at classes today, and we'll just go through them sort of briefly. I'm not going to get too into detail with them. I mean, some I know, obviously I know a lot that I play. There's a lot I don't play as well. But, we'll start off the top one, which is the Alchemist. This is one you see me play a lot of. Now, it's a very good class. When you start out, I wouldn't necessarily use it all the time for killing. You're probably better off with your damage dealers. But later on it'll come into play. Once you get your buffs and your skills and your abilities for all these different things, it'll become a lot more powerful, especially when you're playing solo. It's also, you need to learn it a little bit, that one. In fact, I'll show you. As you see at the bottom there, you've got different skills. Obviously one is throws these things out, which is basically going to do some damage to the enemy there. 2 is a shield, which is very important if you play solo. It'll absorb a lot of damage. You'll get later on, your shield will be stronger, last longer, that kind of thing. So, as with all classes, the shield becomes stronger. 3 is a stimulant, but you normally use that on other players. It just buffs them, gives them 20 or 30% extra damage, I believe, something like that. C again is a shield that everybody can use. You can use it as well. You are invulnerable when you've got this on for a certain amount of time. In 4 you just do that, and it's another shield which reflects damage basically back at the enemy. And R is your special. In this case, she'll shoot up in the air and she can heal herself a little bit or heal other players. And that's kind of your out. Now I use it because obviously it does that, and then that is like an explosion when you mix the chemicals, and it damages all enemies, and it consistently damages all enemies. That's why it's so good when you're playing solo. When you play in group, you're probably going to be using it more as a support class.
This Naiad, we had to fall back. It's too strong for our group. Only an immortal can handle her.
Because the shields you can actually put on your teammates as well. Right, Lightbinder. This one is a good one to have when you're in group. I've never actually played it as such. I've used it once or twice when I first started the game. Again, it puts shields on. I believe it will resurrect people from the dead in teams. Puts barriers up. It has all sorts of abilities like that. And again, it's very useful. So when you start out, you really want to pick one support, one sort of tank defense, and one attack. So pick which one of those you want to go with. But definitely very good in groups. The Knight is a tank basically, and you'll do a lot of putting shields up, and it does quite a bit of, I'd say it does quite a bit of damage. It does a fair bit of damage further on in the game. Nothing like your damage dealers, of course, but you've got the advantage of lots of shields. Same as this one. Paladin I've played a lot, so I'll show you the Paladin one. We're going to have to change just change it to a Paladin. And I'll just show you a couple of things. The good thing with Paladin is shields basically. And like I say, you'll just tank for your teammates most of the time. Another thing I found with the Paladin is the sword is very good against gun turrets. So shield wise, you've got that one. We'll just get in a fight with this. Remember what they all do. V is that one, which basically damages all enemies around you. Got a long cooldown though. C is it just keeps up your, I forgot what they call it now, like your mana, your sort of stamina for longer. And 3 is another shield. This is an invulnerable shield. It doesn't last as long as the other one. But if you work the shields properly on this, you can almost spam them one after another. Almost, not quite. And it has a special. We'll show you the special on this one, 'cause it's quite good. Shoots up in the air, then it comes down like that. And that'll do damage to all enemies. But this primarily is just for tanking, really. But it is very good when you start out as a new player, because if you go as a tank, going through levels, you can shield yourself, and it doesn't matter if it takes you a long time to kill enemies, at least you'll kill them. If you start going with damage dealers, yeah, you'll do a lot more damage, but if you don't do a lot of damage, you're going to die no matter what, so it's better just take your time with a paladin or something. Obviously further down the line it will be, if you're on timers and that, it won't be any good to you. And now we're on to this. Now Archer used to be a really good one. After the update it's still good, but it wasn't quite as good anymore. What happened was it used to be the Archer and the Witch were a couple of the most powerful of the damage dealers, but after they updated it, kind of became the Cryomancer, and they did change some of these abilities around as well. What to show you on that, really? This is electric field. You put it up around you. It'll also buff you and teammates. That's fire arrow. This thing just does rapid shots. Well, maybe that one's a special rapid shot. That one I think you kneel down and you just fire powerful arrows, something like that. Haven't used it in a long time. And it's basically an archer, what an archer does. Berserker. This is like a big chainsaw thing that's just changed into it. We'll go and fight an enemy with this one.
The central yard is up ahead. According to reports,
it's basically like that.
there should be a lot of eggs.
If you hit one, it does that, pulls all the enemies towards you, which is really good if you're trying to, if you've got other classes around you that are being attacked, you can pull all the enemies away from them within a certain area to you, and they won't get hurt. And then you've got 2, which basically jumps forward, does a big attack like that, and 4 basically does that and shocks. You can get the attention of enemies from a distance to come towards you. And C, yeah, that's just a
Situation is
like a
worse
big
than we thought.
powerful
A lot
hit
of clutches,
thing.
and they're almost ready to hatch. We need to eliminate them as soon as possible.
But it's quite a good class, especially we found ages ago if you team that up with a alchemist and the out buffs it all the time, it can do quite a lot of damage. Cryomancer. This one, I haven't played it much, but even I can tell, even from playing it a little bit, that it is a strong, very strong one. It's basically your small attack, and then you've got like the sort of big attack, which is that. 3 just freezes everything. 4, if it's 4, if it's, no, it's V. It'll actually sort of have this thing which spins around, does a lot of damage. And that one puts like an icy thing around. Like I said, I don't really use the Cryomancer, so I've hardly ever used it, but I do know it is extremely powerful. And it moves quite quickly with the sliding. That's another thing that's quite important with your classes, is sometimes is how fast they move. That one and the Witch is probably the couple of the fastest. Let me just kill that. Okay. Right, Gunner. This is one I used to use a lot. Not much to the gunner. I mean, Gunner's basically just spray. It's good for softening up a lot of targets to start with. Like this, you can go down like that, do that, stick up a shield as well. You do have a shield for a short time. Basically you can sort of either soften them up or take a load of them out. It has one neat ability as well, which is the teleport, so you can do that over there, hit it again, and that's quite useful in some places for sort of spraying targets like that when they get too close. Use the teleport. It does take a little while to charge up, but it can keep you alive or get you out of situations. Kinetic, another class I never really use. Basically this one just throws rocks. It's just a sort of fun class. I've only really seen one or two people really use it properly. That's it. So there's something very satisfying about picking up great big rocks and just lobbing them. It has a few abilities when I get out this bubble. This is one of them. Basically charges through your enemies like that. That sends out like a shield. I'm not sure what the shield does exactly. Whether it shields you or whether it does damage to the enemies. Let me have a look at that actually. Creates a field and absorbs 75% damage. There you go, it's protective shield. I didn't want to do that. Just shot on the ground. That basically just lifts and floats them around the air, which is a bit of fun. You can just keep them up in the air. Can't do anything when they're up there, so. And on to the next, Monk. Monk is one I actually, when I started, is the one I really wanted to get, because I'll show you why. Because of that. Basically all those sort of moves, it was just great doing all this stuff. But for me, I haven't really, I mean I did use Monk for quite a while, when I was not right at the beginning, but sort of in the middle somewhere. And yeah, it's a great fun class to use, but it's a bit of an awkward one because it's a close combat one like your tanks, but they take damage, a lot of damage, so it's not that strong, and I don't think it's got shields or anything. Let me just check, because they've changed all this around at one point. Yeah, so you've got all these different stances. Yeah, the only thing it has got is the V, which is that. And that'll actually get you out of, it makes you, you don't take damage. It doesn't last for very long, but it'll get you, like, if somebody throws down acid or something, you can jump up on that. Then you can jump off a bit. You've got, like, this is the kind of a heavy attack. The fire one is, in fact, if you do that, it basically you can just stand there and kill enemies. You just don't even have to fight when you use that. If you do, see if I can get it. That's it. You can hit a lot of enemies with that. It lasts a little while. And finally, the last one, I think it's the wind one. It's basically just sort of slammed into things like that. As far as a class though, like I say, because you've got to get close with it, you will take a lot of damage. And it's not ranged either, so it's a bit of a, I've always found a bit of a useless class. I have seen some people use it, and I mean, if you get really good at it, then it can be okay. But personally, I find it a bit of a strange one. Now, I really only ever use it when I'm just messing around having a bit of fun. If I'm fighting seriously, or in a group, I just wouldn't bother with it. Necromancer, I did use this one for a short while, but not for that long. I don't know, I just couldn't get used to this one. It sort of does all sorts. That's supposed to do something, I don't know. You can die and like that and still fight, and if you die you'll sort of turn into that for a bit before you actually die. Not a class I really, like I say, I've used much. Not one I particularly like more than that. Outlaw. Probably the most simplest class there is. I only ever used the Outlaw for one thing in this game, and that's speedrunning. Why? Because when I go through regions I can do that. And you literally just mow down stuff. You can one-shot stuff. You know, that's the way to farm credits. Of course you can do that, throw grenades out. As far as a useful class, I found it more of a pain in the arse, to be honest, this one. Because what happens is, somebody comes in when you're fighting, they start doing all this in your group, and immediately aggro everything, and then you die, because you just aggro too much with it. So, quite often you'll see in the chat,
It is in the central temple, but there's a shaman blocking the way, but it shouldn't
when he's
pose much
finished.
of a problem for a mortal.
Yeah, quite often you'll see in the chat that they don't want outlaws in the groups, because they are a bit of a wild card. Like I say, do that and everything gets aggroed. Right, and its special is pretty much, that's it, and it's very slow. You won't be able to get out of the way of things if you keep firing like that. It's probably alright when you start. Let's see if he's stunned already. When you start playing, this class is probably alright, but like I say, it's an ideal class for speedrunning, but aside from that, it just makes a lot of noise. Slayer, now this is a really interesting class. This, it never seems to have much use. The one place it is useful is PVP, simply because you can go invisible. It's basically these hook things like this. You do have a range somewhere. Well, that puts down like a thing as they walk into them, they take damage, and that I think makes they can't see you or something like that. I can't remember. Like I don't really use this class either. That's your invisibility. Obviously you can see her, but nobody else can. That's like I say, in PvP that can be very useful. I don't mind this class too much. I have played a little bit with it, not a lot. I don't find it that good in
The only way to the
PvE.
central temple is through the east wing. It appears to be empty, but keep your wits about you anyway.
I haven't played PvP for ages because there's never anybody playing it. Don't really use this thing much anymore. Yeah, that's the range from it. Just couldn't show you because there wasn't any enemies before. So it's both. It's close combat and ranged. That's your ranged.
You're almost there. Try to get inside the temple.
There we go. And then finally, the witch. And you've probably seen me use this one a lot. Again, this is a good one when you're PvEing because it's got things which deal damage to different classes, and it's really fast with that. So you can get out of trouble or move around away from enemies. So that's the thing that deals damage to everybody. And murder crows. You also have that, which you get a lot of enemies at the same time. And if we get over here, and then you have this one, which kind of does that, and then they don't kind of harm you, and then really slows it down, something like that. It also has a curse, and the curse is very useful in group. If you get a Berserker and the Witch together, Witch curses, Berserker breaks the curse and deals a lot of damage to the enemy or the boss that you're fighting. And that is your classes. That is all of them. Now you've probably seen me, I mean my favourite ones to use that I've always used are Alchemist, Paladin. The Archer used to be a favourite, not so much anymore. The Berserker, the Gunner, and the Witch. And I do use the Outlaw, like I say, for speed running, but that's about all I ever use it for. The others, I do use them, but more for fun than anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, Cryomancer and that's probably one of the best there is. But it's up to you what you prefer to play and your styles. I mean, sometimes you get one, like I played the Knight for a bit, but I just found it really boring. I found it a completely boring class to play with. I found the Paladin far more interesting. But that's, you know, that's each individual person's choice. Now, a lot of people actually ask me why I play the Alchemist a lot. Well, my Alchemist, when I use Alchemist, it's incredibly strong. I mean, every time I throw with the right button, it does damage to all enemies. When I use the left button, after I throw with the right button, it explodes and does damage to all enemies. So like, when you're playing solo, you're damaging all the enemies constantly. And at the same time, I've got 2 lots of shields, which I can put up and shield myself if I get in trouble. And if you're in God mode, you put the God's army with the hammer that I have that comes up, and that's probably one of the most powerful combinations there are. Sure, things like the Witch and that do a lot of damage, but yeah, as far as in God mode, she'll do a lot of damage, but she's going to get hurt as well. You'll notice it when you come up against really, really tough bosses, that I'll be able to take the like in, say, Ophelia, when I first started doing Ophelia solo, and I could just about get through like 2 or 3 of the bosses. The Alchemist was the one that always managed to do it. The Witch did damage for sort of half their health, and then I died. I just couldn't take the damage, you see. And the Knight was too slow with doing any damage. It just wouldn't do enough damage. You'd be there for months trying to kill the enemy with that. Although that, you know, you could sit there for a couple of hours trying to kill something. So there you have it. That's just a sort of quick look through classes. I mean, in the end, it's entirely up to you which ones you want to pick. It's all down to preference of how you play, what's your game style. But I would recommend that you always take a support, a knight, and a damage dealer, and basically learn one of each. Because when you're playing in group, it will be required. At some point, you're going to have to, a lot of you are going to be damage dealers. You're going to need a tank at some point, but quite often you'll only need one. And support. You're always going to need support.